Welcome back to the course of strategy. Today we are going to analyze leadership, and not just leadership in general, but how we can use leadership to coordinate the competitive advantage of a company so that the strategy is very successful. With this, we are going to start the third segment, the last segment of the course, in which we try to think about coordination. We start with leadership, then we move into issues of governance, and then we finish with a story of corporate culture. So for today, what we're going to be doing is leadership, and I'm going to introduce a few ideas about leadership and some notions that I want you to remember. Some of these are have been pointed out in courses of human resources, but it is always good to bring them here and try to coordinate what is happening across all these different courses in what is now the capstone course of strategy. From there, I'll move into two different approaches. The effective executive, which is an analysis of some reflection of what do good managers have, and then a story of leadership and mostly the ability, the emotional intelligence that good managers need to have in order to enable the achievement of goals in companies. So with this, let's start with leadership. And what is leadership in general? Very general definition, your ability to influence others, social influence, so that we can achieve a goal together. This is we think about leaders, those that set the vision, the goal, this is what we want to go as a group. Leadership is always a group story. In the course that we are discussing now, it's going to be a company level. An ability to inspire others so that they follow you because they think that you have a really nice vision for the future. And also your ability to not just inspire, but also coordinate the actions of other people, your followers, the people you delegate the decisions to, and the ability to provide support so that you end up being successful in the achievement of the goal. One thing that is a subtle difference is the discussion between do we have leaders or do we have managers? And here, to some extent, is a story of somebody who's going to use the position to induce others to follow, which is to some extent the story of management, versus somebody who uses a social ability to have people follow them because they want to. It's not always the case. Managers and leaders in many cases are doing both. You have to be a very good leader so that it inspires others, but also you have to be a good manager so that you can coordinate and vice versa. But this is a subtle difference that you might see in the future. So with this, let's get into some theoretical story of leadership and the concept of power. And this is a theory, resource dependence theory. It's mostly focused on the analysis of power, and power being defined as the ability of person A to influence the behavior of person B so that person A gets his or her goals or desires achieved. And the story here is one in you are going to try to coordinate, co-opt others so that you receive the support that you need to achieve what you want. With this, we have five different types of power. This is a very traditional classification. And it's legitimate, referent, expert, reward, and coercive. And legitimate power, a story of you have power because that is the position in the hierarchy that you have, and that gives you the ability to influence and exercise decision-making on others. This is authority, this is the hierarchy. Some companies are extremely hierarchical. You always look to your boss to get approval for anything. Others are much more flexible, and there is much more discussion and groups. But the story here is, to what extent are you using your source of power because you have a position of authority? A different story is referent, and this is not the position as such, but it's much more an interpersonal issue, and it is your ability to influence others. This is the social part of power. Yes, in some cases, people in authority have this charisma, but it's not always the case. This is another source of power. You're able to influence others because they think that you are actually good and that you have good ideas, you have the vision. This is back to the definition that we had at the beginning on leadership. A third one is expertise. People come to you and they think that you are an expert and you have certain skills that they don't have, and therefore they are going to follow you. And this is typical based on education and the experience that you develop over time. Then there is a fourth type of power, which is reward. You can provide something that people value. Yes, it can be monetary, but it can also be social rewards, praise, and then the people are going to follow you because they're thinking that, yes, you are going to offer them something that they want. And if you want, the flip side of this is the coercive power. You can exercise power, you can induce the behavior of another person because they are afraid that otherwise they are going to be punished, that there is some threat that if they don't comply with what you are asking them, they are going to have something negative. So these are the 5 traditional sources of power. And to some extent, if you are a good manager, you are subtle and use all of them depending on the situation. In some cases, charisma is required so that people follow you because they think there is a very nice vision. Yes, if you add some rewards to that, there is always a reinforcement. In other cases, you have to exert power with a position story that, look, you have to do this because I am the person that is in charge, or because I know more than you and I have all this experience and I know that we take this decision, it might not be working that well. So again, try to mix all these different sources of power when you're thinking about your managerial role. From there, let's get into a story of executives. If you're what can you do to be a more effective executive? And this is a discussion of Drucker. His recommendations, a story of practices. Start with getting knowledge, and all of this is based on do you understand what is really happening? What do you need to do? What is good for the enterprise? This is back to linking to the story of what is the objective? What is the goal that we are trying to achieve here? Then, yes, you know what you want to do. Can we get into action? Something that can be executed not only by you. The story of an executive or a good manager is an ability to get others to do their best, and not just you doing all the work. What is the plan? What is the actions that you want to do? You are going to take some responsibility for those decisions and then explaining what is happening and then trying to bring people together with you towards achieving the goal. This is the social influence that we were discussing before. And then finally, responsibility and accountability for all. And this is not just I tell you to do this and off you go. And if you want a position or coercive story, it might be much easier if you try to bring them into your vision, your charisma, and then they take your plan, your ideas into account, and off you go, you achieve them. This story, to some extent, links well to another framework that might be good to use in the future, which is coming from Total Quality Management, which is the plan, do, check, act. And this is a story that you start with a plan. What do you want to do? What is your objective? Then you try to execute that particular plan, and then you measure and try to analyze and monitor. This is the checking part. And then if there are things that work extremely well, yes, continue repeating them. If there are some decisions that were not that good, how do we improve them? How do we make sure that the next time around, all of these are going to be better? From there, this is to some extent similar to the process recommended here. And at the same time, you get into a story of continuous improvement, refinement, and best practices in management. So with this, we're going to move to the story of leadership and then the big important concept of emotional intelligence. Why is this important? Because leadership is about social influence, and emotional intelligence is to some extent one way to achieve this type of social influence. 4 different dimensions of emotional intelligence. The first one is know yourself. Do I understand myself? What am I doing? Who am I? What do I see? There is a lot of self-reflection that you have to start doing. And then can you have some level of control, management? Yeah, if you were being managed by somebody else, are you going to be somebody they will recommend? Which are the dimensions that you think, yes, you're very good? Which are the dimensions that you think you need to improve. From there, you get into a story of who are the others, what do they do, can I connect with them, how much empathy do I have in my social relationships. I am aware of the different relationships, especially the informal ones. All of this is about social relationships. The structure is easy to see. Informal relations and the people that go to others because they think that they have some level of exert power, for example, are much more subtle. Who is the charismatic person here? Who is the person that is trying to use coercive influence? Try to understand who are the others, and then from there, your skills, your ability to manage all these different people and influence their behavior. And if possible, try to have them follow you rather than you having to push them to achieve certain things. Rewards and coercion are actions, sources of power, but in general, it's better if you allow others to just follow their own volition. So with this, we end up with different types of leaders, and this is one classification among several of them. First one is a coercive leader. I demand things. This is what I want you to do, and in many cases, it's a story of pushing people to do things. It might create very negative reactions to this. If you create a sense of fear and I have to do this because otherwise something negative is going to happen, there is a lot of yes, I'll do it, and yes, make the person happy and then move away. This tends not to work well in creating a good corporate culture. In some occasions, you might need somebody who is pushing people to do things, but it's better to move away from being only coercive, and then you can move into the story of having some level of authority. And here is a story of you are trying to have them follow you rather than you pushing them. Try to be connecting to others, lots of empathy, and the story of some level of charisma. And from there, you have another alternative, which is affiliative. Here is relationships and connecting with others, much more if you want emotional intelligence. We are a group. I can interact with others. Really, in general, relatively very positive individuals. Democratic is another way of being a leader in which you don't make the decisions. You are not a group, but you try to get a sense of, yes, we are more or less maybe not equal, but close to being equal, and we all have an ability to express our desires and our opinions and try to collaborate with each other. And then we think together as a group. And then you can be a pace setter. You are working really hard and you set an example to others, and you assume or expect that others are going to try to follow your example because look, I'm working really hard, this is very good for us, why don't you try to imitate what I'm doing? In some cases it can work very well. You might have in other occasions some negative feelings about it because it is look, everybody is relatively different. Yes, you are working very hard, but we have different work styles. And then finally, coaching. You try to help others. To some extent, it's a story of skills and expertise. They come to you because they think that, yes, you are going to help them develop better. You're going to try to push them to achieve their best. So these are different types of leaders. All of these require different dimensions of emotional intelligence. And you think about it, all of them have different also underlying dimensions of power. So what do you want to do, or how do you want to achieve your self-awareness? These are some examples that I just pulled out from tests, and these are online. They are free access. If you want to know what type of leader you are, you can go to this website and then plug in and all the different answers, and they will give you a sense of the different dimensions that create or the different dimensions in which you seem to be more of a leader over others. This is useful as the first step of emotional intelligence and the story of self-awareness. What I do, what motivates me, why do I think about this way rather than the other, how do I interact with others. There is also others about the skills, and again, this is another free access test that you can use, input your answers, and then you will get another sense of skills that you can use. And again, all of this is great, but remember that companies or organizations, it's not just one that is always the best. There is always a story of a different variety of abilities, skills, and in this particular case, leadership styles tend to be working best. If you have people who are of one particular type, it might not come to a decision if everybody is trying to be very affiliative and democratic. If you have lots of people who are very authoritative, you might have a very negative relationship. So mixing and matching might be good, but what is better, and this is the lesson that we're trying to get here, is understanding you and understanding others, and try to get a sense. Yes, they might not answer your questionnaire, but you can get a sense of the different styles, personalities, and the levels of emotional intelligence they have. So with this, some lessons. What is the story for today? Competitive advantage. We are now getting into self-coordination. We start with leaders. And leaders are not only the people at the top. It's not the CEO, the only one that is the leader. The story is the person who's able to influence socially others to achieving a goal. It can be, yes, at the top. That's a story of authority and legitimate power, but it can be anybody at the different levels. You, as you start working in the company, can be a leader because you add some expertise, or because people think that you are a person that they can rely on. Different types of power. And this is important because it enables you to understand the work life and why you are going to be influenced one way or the other. And these are also abilities for you to influence others. Some people react very well if you want to referent powers. Other people are just much more focused on reward power. In some cases, coercion is needed. So it's a mix and match depending on how individuals react to power. And then two different stories about executives. How do you become a highly successful or effective executive? Plans, thinking about what is happening in the company, and starting with having the knowledge to do this. From there, you get into actions, and then you also make sure that people are understanding and they feel responsible and accountable, and they follow you and they do the work. This is a story of delegation. And then the biggest skill that you need to do this is emotional intelligence. Start with self-awareness and self-management, and then you can get into the story of social awareness and management. And with this, you get into different types of leaders: coercive, authoritative, affiliative, democratic, phase setting, and coaching. This is a classification. There are other alternative classifications, but it is good to start thinking how is that you are going to influence others, how are you influenced, and can you develop this emotional intelligence to be successful as a leader. So with this, we are going to close now, and I will see you in class soon. Bye-bye.